Picture this. You are at a park with your dog. Across the path, another dog approaches. Your dog pauses, goes still. Then something shifts, a deep, focused sniff, a tail that moves differently than it does with other dogs. You will never know for certain what just happened in their mind. But science is getting closer to an answer. And what researchers have found about how dogs remember what they store, what lasts, what their brain holds onto across years of separation, is more precise, more moving, and more scientifically verifiable than most owners ever realize. Today, we go through exactly what the research says. No assumptions dressed up as facts, just what has actually been measured, recorded, and published, and the answers to the question your dog cannot give you themselves. 1. The brain your dog is working with. Before we talk about what a dog remembers, we need to understand the brain doing the remembering, because the dog brain, while structurally similar to ours in many ways, is wired with a very different set of priorities. According to research reviewed in multiple peer-reviewed sources, the section of a dog's brain devoted to analyzing scent is, proportionally, approximately 40 times larger than the equivalent region in the human brain. Dogs possess somewhere between 125 million and 300 million olfactory receptors in their noses, depending on the breed. Humans have approximately 6 million. This is not a minor difference. It is a fundamental architectural choice, a brain built around smell the way ours is built around sight. Why does this matter for memory? Because in a dog's brain, scent and memory are deeply connected. According to Science Insights, the hippocampus, the structure deep within the brain responsible for storing and retrieving memories, works closely alongside the regions that process scent. This means that for a dog, the most durable, most precise memories are almost always anchored in smell. This is the foundation of everything that follows. Because when a scientist wants to know whether a dog remembers their mother, the most meaningful question is not whether they recognize her face or her voice. The question is, do they recognize her scent? And that is exactly where the research begins. 2. The experiment that changed what we thought we knew. In 1994, Dr. Peter G. Hepper, a professor at the School of Psychology at Queen's University Belfast, Northern Ireland, published a landmark study in the journal Behavioral Processes that set the foundation for everything scientists now understand about how dogs recognize their mothers. The experimental design was straightforward. Puppies aged between 4 and 5.5 weeks were placed at one end of a room. At the other end, 2 wire enclosures were set up, one containing the puppy's own mother, the other containing an unfamiliar female dog of the same age and breed. Researchers then recorded which enclosure each puppy moved toward and how long they spent there. The results, according to Dr. Stanley Coren's review of the study in Psychology Today, were unambiguous. 84% of the puppies preferred their own mother. But Dr. Hepper did not stop there. He wanted to know whether this recognition was driven by scent or by visual and auditory cues. So he repeated the experiment only this time. Instead of live dogs in the enclosures, he placed large squares of toweling cloth that the respective dogs had slept on for 2 days. The result was remarkably similar. When pups were given a choice of a cloth impregnated with their mother's odor versus one impregnated with the odor of a similarly aged, unfamiliar female of the same breed, 82% showed a preference for the scent of their mother. The conclusion was clear. Puppies do recognize their mothers, and scent is the primary mechanism through which that recognition operates. 3. Does it last? The 2-year question. Recognizing your mother at 5 weeks old is one thing. The question that matters more, the one every dog owner actually wants answered, is whether that memory survives separation. Whether the dog that was taken from their mother at 8 weeks and has lived with you ever since still carries something of her inside them. Dr. Hepper's research extended to address exactly this. According to a peer-reviewed citation of his 1994 study in the journal Animal Cognition, Hepper found that dogs show preference toward their mother and offspring versus an unfamiliar, unrelated individual, even after a 2-year separation, relying solely on olfactory cues. This finding is significant and worth pausing on. Young adult dogs, animals that had been separated from their biological mothers at the standard weaning age and had spent roughly 2 years living with their human families, were still able to distinguish their mother's scent from that of an unfamiliar dog of the same breed. According to the Whole Dog Journal, Hepper's study also found that mother dogs could recognize their pups even a couple of years after separation. This means the recognition is bidirectional, not just puppy to mother, but mother to offspring as well. It is important to note what this research does and does not tell us. It tells us that a chemical signature, the scent of a specific dog, persists in long-term memory for at least 2 years. It does not tell us that a dog experiences this recognition with anything resembling the emotional complexity of a human reunion. As dog trainer Katharina Marioth noted in an interview with Pet Book magazine, dogs recognize animals they knew before, but not necessarily with the emotional depth we humans might expect. The recognition is real. What it feels like to the dog remains scientifically open. 4. What the brain is actually doing and why scent memory lasts. To understand why a dog can hold onto their mother's scent across years of separation, you need to understand how scent memory is formed in the first place. In the first weeks of a puppy's life, a process called olfactory imprinting takes place. According to research on neonatal mammals, including findings published in the journal eLife, the olfactory system undergoes a critical period shortly after birth, during which exposure to specific scents creates lasting neural patterns in the brain. These patterns are reinforced through the early bond between mother and offspring. Research has also explored the role of oxytocin in cementing these early bonds. A 2021 study published in Frontiers in Veterinary Science, which examined oxytocin in lactating dogs, found that the oxytocin system is actively involved in shaping mother-pup interaction during the nursing period. Oxytocin, a hormone associated broadly with social bonding across mammalian species, appears to play a role in making these early experiences neurologically significant. However, the same study noted that salivary oxytocin alone could not serve as a reliable predictor of maternal care behavior, and called for further research. So this piece of the puzzle remains incomplete. What is more firmly established is how the hippocampus handles these early scent memories. According to Science Insights, the hippocampus in dogs is responsible for the storage and retrieval of memories, particularly those that carry emotional significance. The amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, tags experiences according to their emotional weight, and the hippocampus stores them accordingly. Experiences charged with strong sensation or emotion, particularly those from the earliest critical period of life, are encoded more durably than neutral ones. This is why the scent of a mother, experienced thousands of times during feeding, warmth, and safety in the first weeks of life, may be among the most deeply encoded memories a dog carries. 5. The wider picture what dogs remember at all. Understanding whether a dog remembers their mother requires understanding what kinds of memory dogs have access to. For a long time, the scientific assumption was that dogs operated primarily on associative memory, a system built around reward and repetition, not the recall of specific past events. That assumption was challenged significantly in 2016 when researcher Claudia Fugazza of Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest, along with colleagues Ákos Pogani and Adam Miklosi, published a study in the journal Current Biology that provided the first direct evidence of episodic-like memory in dogs. The method was called Do as I Do. Dogs were first trained to imitate human actions on command. Then came the key test. Dogs were shown a human perform an action, but were then trained to expect a completely different response afterward, specifically to lie down. Later, unexpectedly, the dogs were given the Do It command. Could they recall the earlier action even though they had no reason to expect being tested on it? The study found that dogs can recall a person's complex actions, even when they don't expect to have their memory tested. Dogs were tested after 1 minute and after 1 hour. The results showed they were able to recall the demonstrated actions after both short and long time intervals. However, their memory faded somewhat over time. As Fugazza herself stated in a press release quoted by Neuroscience News, the results of our study can be considered as a further step to break down artificially erected barriers between non-human animals and humans. Dogs are among the few species that people consider clever, and yet we are still surprised whenever a study reveals that dogs and their owners may share some mental abilities despite our distant evolutionary relationship. A follow-up study by Fugazza and colleagues, published in Scientific Reports in 2020, extended these findings by showing that dogs could also recall their own past actions, not just the actions of others, with the same episodic-like pattern of decay over time. Taken together, these studies tell us that a dog's memory is not a simple reflex system. It encodes specific events. It retains them across time. It shows the characteristic fading curve of episodic memory that researchers recognize in humans. 6. What separation actually does to the memory and to the dog. Here is a piece of the science that carries real practical weight. The strength of a dog's memory of their mother is not fixed. It depends heavily on how long they spent together before separation. According to research cited by Cornell University's College of Veterinary Medicine, puppies who are separated from the litter too early are more likely to show fear, aggression, anxiety, resource guarding, reactivity, and inappropriate play biting than puppies who stay with the litter for at least 8 weeks. A study by Slabert and Rasa, cited in a peer-reviewed paper published in BMC Veterinary Research, found that puppies separated from maternal care at 6 weeks showed greater weight loss, distress, disease susceptibility, and increased mortality up to 6 months of age compared to puppies that remained with their mothers until 12 weeks. Research published in a study referenced in Preventive Veterinary Medicine found that puppies separated from their mothers between 30 and 40 days of age were significantly more likely to develop destructive behavior, excessive barking, fearfulness on walks, and noise reactivity as adults. What this research tells us is that the mother-puppy relationship is not merely sentimental. It is a neurological and behavioral scaffold. The longer it is allowed to stand before removal, the more durable the dog's ability to cope with the world, and, according to Hepper's research, the more durable the scent memory that links them to their mother. 7. What it means for the dog beside you. So does your dog remember their mother? Based on the research, the most accurate answer is, almost certainly, in a meaningful and measurable way, yes, through scent for at least 2 years after separation, and possibly longer. The precise upper limit has not yet been established in peer-reviewed literature. Does that memory carry the weight of human emotional longing? Science cannot yet say. The recognition is real. The inner experience of that recognition remains beyond what our instruments can currently measure. What we do know from Fagaz's episodic memory work is that your dog's memory is not the blank, moment-to-moment existence it was once assumed to be. Events are encoded. Experiences are stored. Faces, or more precisely, scents are held. Your dog lived the first weeks of their life pressed against another animal who fed them, warmed them, and encoded in their brain as the first and most fundamental safe presence they ever knew. That imprint went deep. It went into the hippocampus, shaped during the most neurologically malleable period of their existence, anchored by scent in a brain built to hold scent above all else. And then they came to you, and you became the next safe presence, the next scent encoded into that same system. When a dog presses close to you at the end of a long day, they are not simply being affectionate. They are recognizing something their brain has filed as fundamental and kept close. Science is still learning the full shape of what that is, but what has already been found is extraordinary. If this changed how you see your dog, do one thing before you leave. Hit like. Drop a comment telling us whether your dog has ever met their mother again and what happened. And subscribe, because understanding the neuroscience behind your dog's mind is not just fascinating, it is how you understand what they are actually telling you.